Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello. It's 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. And November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, Prostate Cancer, and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. Also, November 11th is Veterans Day. Reach out to your veterans and say hello. Thank you them for their service. I am your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Veteran Medic, retired Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. Our discussion concerns the JBVA Prostate Cancer Awareness and Caregiver Support Program. We have two distinguished panelists with us today. The first is Dr. Joel Cornfield, MD, who is the Section Chief of Urology at the Jesse Brown VA Medical Center. He completed his MD degree at the University of Wisconsin and his residency and fellowship training at the University of Illinois, and then the Westside VA Hospitals, now known as Jesse Brown VA. For those who are back of our time, I remember back in the days we called it Westside VA. We also have, hello, Dr. Cornfield. And we also have Janika Walker, is a licensed clinical social worker, which is really close to my heart. My mother was a social worker for many years, from age 22 to 91. She actually, shortly before she had a major stroke, she was knocking on people's doors to make sure they took their medications 2 weeks before. But she is holds a master's degree in social work with a concentration in mental health from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. She is the manager of the Caregiver Support Program at Jesse Brown VA Medical Center. She has extensive experience with nonprofits and criminal justice advocacy aimed at caregiver, psychoeducation, homelessness outreach, supportive services, and reducing recidivism. What a distinguished career. It sounds like you're busy every second of every day with that kind of background.
Thank you.
So welcome to you both. And today we're going to be talking about prostate cancer and questions that the audience may have in their minds that you can sort of address. So the first question I have for you, and I'll go to Dr. Cornfield first. What does the prostate gland do, and what are some of the health risks associated with having a prostate?
Well, the prostate sits just beneath the bladder, and it surrounds the urethra. So at that point, anatomically, the urethra is made up of the prostate, and the prostate makes semen, not the sperm. The sperm and the semen are then stored in two little glands next to the prostate called seminal vesicle, and then there's ejaculatory ducts that course through the prostate. And when someone ejaculates, when a male ejaculates, the semen with the sperm in it is projected out.
Okay.
And so the prostate is important for reproduction.
Yeah, how big is the prostate gland? About
we always say, the size of a walnut.
A walnut,
but,
okay.
It can be 20 grams to 30 grams on an average size. When people are a little older, it starts to grow, and it can cause some problems with obstruction and infection, and it can get to be quite large. It can get up to be 10, 12 ounces even, which is obviously significant.
Yes. Yeah,
the other issue that people are concerned about with the prostate and health risks for the prostate is the development of prostate cancer.
Yes.
Which is what we wanted to talk about today.
Yes. And then we can go into a little bit more about that, about, the enlarged prostate versus prostate cancer and what that means. But what are some of the risk factors for developing prostate cancer? We always talk about risk factors in health.
The main risk factors are age, which is really everybody's goal, right? Family history. There can be genetic risk factors, so someone could be BRCA1 or BRCA2 positive and be prone to developing prostate cancer. And of course, at Jesse Brown, one of the big risk factors is being Black, African American. The African American men tend to develop prostate cancer at an earlier age. It tends to be more aggressive. And so we tend to be a little more aggressive about making the diagnosis earlier. We do start screening Black men earlier, and we are probably a little bit quicker to do biopsies.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because, actually back in 2003, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So I ended up having, a prostate resection and removal. But that was 3 months before something happened. I was on my, bed at the hospital after having the surgery. And then Colin Powell came on and they asked him, well, when are you going back to work? And they said 3 months. And he said, how about 2 weeks? I'm going to go back to work. So it motivated me. And I actually went over to serve my first tour of duty in Iraq, 3 months later. And luckily I had a Vietnam surgeon and he actually did the surgery. And he and he said, and I said, you're going to sign this release, let me go, right? Because you were served too. So he finally signed it. He said, go ahead.
And obviously he was right.
Yes, he was right. And so that was that. So I've been doing fine after that. The surgeries are much better than they used to be, years ago, with some of the complications. So you still have some risk, but not quite as much as you had some years ago. So how do you screen and check for prostate cancer?
Well, the initial screening begins with the rectal exam.
Yes.
If the rectal exam is completely normal, we'll still obtain a PSA on men as they turn, African American men as they turn 45, Caucasian men as they turn 50. And we have a range of normal. It should be anywhere from 0 to 4. And interestingly, the PSA, well, everybody talks about it, is an enzyme that is required for the semen to become liquefied.
Yes.
So without the PSA and the heavy concentration of PSA, you wouldn't get the liquefaction of the semen, and you wouldn't be able to impregnate anybody.
Yes.
So we do the rectal exam and the PSA, and then over the last few years, we started pairing the rectal exam and the PSA with an MRI of the prostate, which closer to the tissue to tell us where there's riskier areas as opposed to more normal-looking areas. We can direct the biopsy. In general, if you have a rectal exam and we feel something hard or a nodule or some asymmetry, that in and of itself is enough to trigger a biopsy. If you have an elevated PSA, depending on how high, if it's really high, that may trigger a biopsy, even with a normal exam. If you have a PSA somewhere between 4 and 10, usually we'll get a fractionated PSA and see if the varieties of the PSA in the bloodstream are correct and adequate enough for us to put off the biopsy. If not, we'll go ahead with another biopsy. And then the biopsies we do can be done either transrectally or transperineally. Usually when we do a transperineal biopsy, we'll have the patient under an anesthesia. There's a little bit less risk of infection, a little bit less risk of bleeding with that, but the trade-off is the anesthesia. And so most people will opt for the transrectal biopsy. And sometimes you'll have conflicting data. You'll have a PSA that's quite high and an MRI that's normal, and then a biopsy that's positive, or even vice versa. And so it really requires putting all of the pieces of the puzzle together to sort of decide who gets a biopsy and who doesn't get a biopsy. And then, of course, we do offer patients the opportunity not to have their PSA done, not to have a rectal exam if they're opposed to it. And then we'll try to work around with either, let's say someone doesn't want a rectal exam, we'll try to work around that with a PSA and an MRI. Or if someone doesn't want a repeat PSA or a repeat biopsy, we'll follow them. We try to work within the framework of what the patients will allow us to do, in the sense that not everybody, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Not everybody wants to have that kind of an invasion. And then, of course, as people turn 70, 71, 72, there's a lot of talk about being less aggressive in terms of making the diagnosis, because then you're butting up against someone's natural life expectancy. And the reality is that the treatments for prostate cancer are, for the first 10 years between radiation and surgery, the results are essentially the same. And then after about 10 years, you start to see a divergence in the results. And so people who have surgery will have better results at 15 years than people that have radiation. But if you're 75, right, you have to assess what your life expectancy is going to be and make a decision about whether you want to just be watched, or have radiation, whether you want to get community care for some kind of focal therapy, or have surgery. And we do two different varieties of surgery at Jesse Brown. We do open surgery and we do the robotic surgery. And the long-term results for both of those surgeries are fairly consistent across the board, with the same rates of incontinence and impotence. However, with the robotic surgery, people tend to leave the hospital sooner. They tend to recover faster. They tend to get up faster. They tend to have less blood loss, things like that. But to go back to the beginning of the office visit, someone comes in, they've had a PSA done, maybe a little elevated. We talk to them about the rectal exam. We do the rectal exam, and then we talk to them about the MRI, and then we may get an MRI or we may not, depending on how the rectal exam is. And then we may or may not move forward with a biopsy, or if someone's PSA is only slightly elevated, we probably will repeat it before pushing a biopsy on them.
Okay.
So there's a lot of shared decision making that goes on.
Yes. Yeah, because there was one other thing we mentioned this a little bit earlier was the issue of, an enlarged prostate, so prostatic hypertrophy and that kind of thing. And so what is that? And does that mean you're going to necessarily get cancer, or how does that?
No. So as we age, after about age 35 or so, the prostate starts to enlarge as a result of the lifelong exposure to testosterone. About half of the men will have issues with that enlarging prostate, causing symptoms of obstruction or infection in the course of their lifetime. There's no relationship between an enlarged prostate and developing prostate cancer. In fact, most cancers arise in a different section of the prostate than the enlargement area. And so, yes, prostate cancer can cause symptoms of obstruction if it's been there for a while and it's been growing, but that isn't a result of the prostate being enlarged. So patients who have an enlarged prostate, they end up being treated in a whole different way than patients who have prostate cancer. And sometimes the two overlap a little bit.
Yeah, what's the relationship? Because some people are taking supplemental testosterone, sometimes called vitamin T in the gyms.
Well, we don't really think that the testosterone actually causes the prostate cancer, but in some patients who have a low-grade, non-invasive, clinically insignificant prostate cancer, it can be almost like pouring gasoline on a fire and make it blossom and grow faster. And so when we recommend that when patients are on testosterone therapy, particularly after the age of 45 or 50, that they get regular PSAs, regular rectal exams, and that at the first sign of trouble, they be looked at relatively more closely. But no, it doesn't cause the prostate cancer. That's
great. Yeah, Janika, because this is Janika. This is one of the things, and I'm going to bring you into this discussion now because this is a great explanation that that we received from Dr. Cornfield. And as he was saying things, it sounded like, you're starting to really weave into a network of the required clinical care and social services that sort of fold into this process for you to have a good outcome. So what is your role in this program for the Caregiver Support Program, and how does that fit into things?
Dr. Arnold, thank you. As Dr. Cornfield was talking, one of the things that was going through my mind is something that we promote here at Jesse Brown and hopefully throughout all of the VHA networks, which is inclusive care, right? So when we're talking about where men, primarily Black and brown men, are dealing with, prostate cancer and awareness and things of that nature, a lot of the times we invite family members to come and be inclusive with their care, right? And to really have a seat at the table, to really be involved. I know my husband all the time is talking about, I can't remember what my doctor said. So a lot of the times I have to, step in. And so a lot of the times here at Jesse Brown, that's what we're seeing in our program as well. So here at the Caregiver Support Program here at Jesse Brown, we offer a myriad of clinical and support services for caregivers who are caring for our nation's veterans. This program was curated and developed as a part of the Omnibus Act, where VA realized that we had a lot of people returning home post 9/11 who were really coming back without tools, without resources, who really had critical and traumatic mental health and physical debilitating illnesses, and they needed support. And they realized that family and friends were leaving behind their lives that they knew when their veterans came home, and they realized that there was a critical need to support those people who held those veterans up. And so with that, we started with the post 9/11 caregiver support program, and that pretty much was open to all post 9/11 veterans. And it was under the Missions Act in 2018 that expanded this service to all era veterans. And we did that in two phases, starting in 2020. We opened it up to our prior to May 7th, 1975 veterans. And then phase two of October 2022, we opened that up to include all eras of veterans. So yeah, that's pretty much how we got started.
That's fantastic, because the major message I think you're telling me is that you're not alone in this. And I remember when I was first diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2003, it was in October of 2003. I had the surgery in December, and then I was in Iraq on March of 2004. and so one of the things that I learned is as a patient, because as a physician, you sit there and then you hear the diagnosis and you completely leave the room. You are not there anymore. And you turn around and go like, what did you just say? I have a diagnosis. So it's good to have people there to help you and help you through it, and to know that there are people there. If it wasn't for people like Dr. Cornfield, I might not be alive today. I had my surgery back in 2003. This is 2024. Yeah. And, haven't had no comments. I went in because my father had prostate cancer. And then after that, I told my brother, identical twin brother, and he went and he had it. And so he had the surgery as well. So this is something that it's something that we have to talk about, and you have to know that there are people there that can help you, that can actually save your life and stop you from going through unnecessary pain, suffering, and then your families to go through it with you as well. So it's important to get the care early and to make sure that you are having routine checkups by your personal doctor, just like you have it for anything else, for diabetes checks or high blood pressure checks. So prostate is part of your body, and that you need to take care of it and understand how it functions and how it works in your body. So, one of the things that I was warning about is also, is there a way to prevent prostate cancer? Because a lot of people have things out there. They have, well, everything from eating pumpkin seeds to elixirs and off the shelves. So what do you think?
There's a lot of supplements out there,
Right.
none of which have really been shown to be efficacious in preventing prostate cancer. There is a study going on about concerning finasteride and Avodart, dutasteride, as to whether or not the use of these drugs can prevent the development of the less aggressive disease. But yet that's not going to do much for the more aggressive disease. And in fact, it's the more aggressive disease that we really worry about, because now we know that the cancer it's really more than one disease. It's a spectrum of disease. Well, it's one disease on a spectrum of disease. And the milder forms are ones that we can watch. And the trick is to suss out which ones are actually milder, and which ones are more aggressive, and which ones require care and treatment, and which ones we can wait for a few years before we do anything. The one thing that we do know is that one of the things that can contribute to the development of prostate cancer is high-fat diet and alcohol. Are the two things that we know. So, if you do develop prostate cancer, you may very well be able to slow its course a little bit by changing your diet and giving up drinking. If you're younger and you don't have prostate cancer, then you may be able to stave it off by giving up alcohol and changing your diet. And I don't mean, never have a hot dog, never have fries, right? But don't only have hot dogs and fries.
Yes.
And then from an incidence standpoint, just to put things in perspective, if you take a man who's 100 years old randomly, and you do a prostate biopsy on him, 100% of those men are going to have prostate cancer. Doesn't matter what race, what religion they are, where they come from, they're all going to have some degree of prostate cancer in their prostate. And so we do know that it's really important to be able to ultimately determine which of these cancers are the ones that are going to affect this host in the course of their lifetime, as opposed to the ones that they can live with and die of something else with.
Yeah, because that's what, one of the things that used to really irritate me was the issue with high blood pressure, when people were being told, just eat garlic, don't worry about taking medication, friends' advice. And that's why I was asking you that question.
It didn't do me any good.
No. So that's one of the things I worry about, is that people are telling them, well, just eat some pumpkin seeds and don't worry about it. Your doctor said you have to come back, but you can take care of it yourself. And
yeah, I have been told by patients that pumpkin seeds cure, deal with prostate cancer, prostatitis, BPH, bladder symptoms, and kidney stones.
Oh.
Yes.
So everything on the sink.
Everything under the sun.
So one of the things is, how do people get in touch with the advocacy program? The Caregiver Support Program is at Jesse Brown VA, but some of the veterans may not be aware of it, and how to find out more information and to get in touch with the department, the Veterans Affairs Department. The VA, first of all, gives excellent care and excellent service. It's my experience for going there. And it's something that I think people need to know that is an avenue. So if they're sitting there and just are there to get a flu shot and that's all they want to do, maybe they need to do a little bit more looking into themselves and getting an evaluation, having a primary care and a referral, to your urologist, and if necessary to the caregiver support program if something happens and you find something. So how do people get in touch with that, and what's the recommended approach for a veteran who's walking into the VA for the first time?
Is that for me or
Yeah, I guess for both.
Well, for us, we usually get our referrals from the primary care service.
Okay. Yes.
So usually, what will happen is they'll come in, they'll establish care with a primary care doctor, and then the primary care doctor will do the necessary lab work and the necessary exam, and then make a referral to us. Although, if they do want to come in directly, we don't have an issue with that. And if they want to call in and get to the clinic schedulers, they can certainly schedule an appointment.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and what about your view, Janika, about getting in touch with your support services? You're the manager of the caregiver support program.
Absolutely. So, anyone who is interested in support services can reach out online. Our website is www.caregiver.va.gov. We have a facility locator. So, even if you're not in the Chicagoland area and you receive care at another VA, you can click on that locator button and come right to us. There's plenty of information about our two programs, Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, as well as our Program of General Caregiver Support Services. So you can find more information about what fits your needs there. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and one thing I want to really go back and touch on something really quickly. It was the issue about the PSA, because people are confused about the PSA, what the numbers mean, and what does that mean for me? Do I have to get surgery? So maybe you can go through that again. That's a question that always comes up.
Yeah, the PSA has become pretty controversial for an unnecessary reason. Because when it first came out, and this is back in the 80s when I was in training, it was the only marker that we could really use with any accuracy in terms of deciding who should be looked at and who we can maybe leave alone. And that's really still the case. So we use the PSA as a screening tool. It's not a diagnosis of prostate cancer. Someone with an elevated PSA could have that elevated PSA because they have some inflammation or because their prostate is a little bit enlarged. Although it does not go up when you're riding the bike, which is one of the things that we've heard in the lay literature and on television. That's not really true. Although we do tell people, don't ride the bike for a day before you come in. If you're constipated and you have you strain a lot at the bowel movement, the next day your PSA may be up. If you ejaculate, your PSA may be up for a day or two. So those are things that people should be aware of. But usually when someone comes in, we get a PSA, it's elevated, we will always repeat it. Make sure that it's something that is worth looking at.
Okay.
If it is consistently elevated, then we'll usually move on. And depending on the patient's age and what kind of previous workup they've had, we'll go ahead and get an MRI. And then we'll look at the MRI. And if the MRI has a lesion on it and the PSA is elevated, then we'll ask the patient to undergo a biopsy.
Yeah. Okay, so we're out of time before my producer gets angry at me, but we're going to have both of you back again. This was a fantastic conversation and something that I think everyone needs to hear. So stay with us. We'll have another show coming up. But then thank you so much, Dr. Cornfield, and thank you, Ms. Walker. You have really enlightened the people who are listening to this, and
thank you for having me.
And thank you for your service to the veterans.
Thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek.
And sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered.
Hello, it's 5:30 p.m. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, Prostate Cancer Awareness, and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. November 11th is Veterans Day. Remember your veterans, the people around you that are family members, friends, and give them some honor that day. Let them know that you appreciate their service to our country. I am your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Veteran Medic, retired Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. I have an esteemed partner with us today, and I am always amazed by the things that he tells us when he comes on to talk about the energy production in this country. But he is Ron Matthew, a U.S. Navy Veteran Co-Founder, CEO of Brevian Energy, specializing in microgrid technologies and renewable energy. I hope you got all of that. He's very, very deep and complex in his thinking about these issues. And his company, actually, Brevian Energy, they are committed to fighting the effects of climate change, and their mission is to bring affordable, reliable, renewable power to homes, businesses, and communities in every possible location. He actually works with Disabled Veterans Business Enterprise and a minority-owned business. So empowerinnovation.net, make sure he's going to give you some other places to go to get your information about his company, but make sure you take a look at his website. It is outstanding. So what we're going to do is have a discussion today about clean energy infrastructure needed in rebuilding after natural disasters like tornadoes, hurricanes, heavy rains. All these things can have devastating effects. We know, as we watched with Helene, back in history, we had Katrina and Rita, but we have these things happening more and more and at higher degrees of intensity. So the need for his services are growing, not shrinking. So very good to have you here. How are you doing, Ron?
I'm doing wonderful, sir. Thank you for having me. It's always a great pleasure to be with you on your show.
Oh, fantastic. Following a disaster, establishing microgrids is really essential. and especially in areas that are isolated and they have power failures, and you can just you can sort of leverage distributed energy resources and energy storage systems. So what is this? Why is it so important to bring that into a community that's just been devastated by a disaster?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question because as you just alluded to, these types of natural disasters are happening more frequently, and they are happening with greater severity in most cases. One of the great things about microgrids is the resiliency factor that they present, because you're always generating your own electricity and you are storing it. You're your own closed loop per se. So you're not necessarily depending on the local investor-owned utility to provide your power. So
that's what a microgrid is. It's a contained system that is really under your control. Okay.
Absolutely. So it comes equipped with battery storage. You can even include diesel generators, or we prefer hydrogen generators that can make up your power source that can run 24/7, 365 without having to rely on the utility company, which in most cases, after big disasters or big storms like that, a lot of the power lines are down or unavailable, or they don't have the capacity to serve the demand that's going on at that particular time. So having things like microgrids will always ensure that you have power to power up vital things like refrigerators and lights and cooking equipment and things of that nature in those natural disasters.
Yeah, I remember responding to Hurricane Katrina back in the day, and one of the things that really struck me very heavily is when I got there, it was the silence. It was the lack of light. So you had no moving cars, you had no lights in any building, no street lights. Everything was down. The grid was completely down. So you didn't hear anything. All the birds were blown out of the area. And it was almost like a deafening silence. I've never been in an area that was so silent. And
especially in New Orleans. New Orleans is not a quiet place.
Oh, yes. It was very contrasting. Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of thing, it really brought home the importance of having electricity. And sometimes people are also, in those areas where they are requiring a ventilator, they're requiring something,
absolutely,
to sustain their life.
CPAP machines, oxygen, all kinds of, vital medical equipment that requires power. And these people can't survive without those particular devices. So it's very crucial.
Yeah. And, and there was a thing, there was the founding principles of the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster is a national VOAD, but they were saying there were 4 C's: communication, coordination, collaboration, and cooperation. And those 4 C's, it seems like you need power for all of them.
Everything. That's why we look for, particularly in our communities, we look for things, places we can create what's called resiliency hubs, places that have space, number one, that's adequate to service a lot of people. They may have a kitchen, refrigerators. We want to make sure we put microgrids on those locations so they can serve as, emergency centers for the community in times of distress.
Yeah, that's really important, because when you think about it, we are so technologically intertwined, and you can almost hear people gasping when their phone runs out of power and they're running to I had to plug this in somewhere. And
absolutely.
They don't have that. They're really stressed out from that. And so we've become
we look to make schools, things like schools and churches, areas like that. If we can provide 24/7 power to areas like that, they can be that beacon in the community where the people can come and charge their phones and make phone calls. And in cases where their homes have been destroyed or something like that, they can put cots there and people can be fed and things of that nature. So we look to those areas to put things like microgrids on them so they can be that light in the community and provide those services that are so desperately needed.
Yeah. And then, there were like 4 areas that you mentioned on your website, building efficiency. So that was the data centers. So what does that involve? Data centers. Why are those important?
I mean, well, now the biggest buzzword in the country when it comes to technology is AI, or artificial intelligence. That requires a lot of computing power. Yeah. So you're going to see there's a huge demand now for more and more capacity, which is going to require more and more of these data centers that house, these computer programs and computer hardware to run these models. So you're seeing more and more data centers put up, and these data centers require quite a bit of power. And the best way, the most expensive way, and the most resilient way to do that, and the most sustainable way to do that, is to use microgrids to power these up, because the demand is only increasing.
Yeah, and then you also mentioned on your website about energy sources and fuels. So there's like bioenergy, biofuels, combined heat and power, concentrating solar power, fuel cells, hydrogen fueling infrastructure, and other energy sources, photovoltaics, and then wind technology. So it seems like it's a very complex infrastructure, but they all are trying to produce one thing: electricity, right?
That's it. I mean, it's a mixture of all of those. And really, depending on your location, depending on how much space you have, depending on your demand, every situation is different, right? So a different combination of those power generation assets may be required for different situations. One thing we like to say about microgrids, if you've seen one microgrid, you've seen one microgrid, because they're all different.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's what we usually say about the public health departments back in my background.
Yeah, nothing is the same,
No,
and if somebody comes and just try to fit you into a cookie cutter, then they're not really taking into account your specific requirements and your specific needs, because everybody's needs are totally different.
Yeah.
So that's really the key. It's almost designing a microgrid is almost like artistry.
Oh yeah, I can imagine, because and it will probably depend on, you have local businesses too that maybe you have to get up and running, food distribution centers, all that kind of stuff, where they need that energy and they need the power to get back on, as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
And then so there's there's also software and systems, and you had distributed energy resource management systems, energy management systems and platforms, energy security software, Internet of Things. That's the big monster out there, the Internet of Things,
IoT,
metering systems. So what is that all about? The software piece of it. Why is it so important to have that? I know you started talking about AI, and it has a critical role.
I mean, that's kind of it. There are software applications out there that we use to optimize the output of these particular generation technologies. It'll know at a certain point, run the battery for, until it gets to a certain level. And at this point, you turn it off and you go to the hydrogen fuel cell. And when the hydrogen fuel cell gets to a certain point, you kick that over to now generating from the solar. And after the solar starts producing at a certain level, it goes to, and all of these things are controlled by software. So it's no, little guy sitting around looking at a gauge and click things off. It's all done via software, and it's optimized via software. Wow. And even moving further into the future, using AI to even make even greater and more crucial decisions of when to power things up, and it predicting when demands are going to spike, and be prepared for all of those. So yeah, software is a very important aspect of what we do.
Yeah, because I know there's a thing going on now with Epic, the Epic system and that kind of thing, and how, that's an important system for hospital systems and for communication, for medical information, especially if you're in a disaster. You need to be able to get that information back and forth. If you're down with power, you have a problem on your hands trying to get certain information to help people. And there was one thing you have on there also about energy storage, batteries, electrochemical storage, grid level energy storage applications, integrated distributed storage applications. So this is something, I see people in my local community here that have solar panels on their roofs, and now it's about, well, how much of a storage battery do you have? And I know the prices are starting to come down on a lot of these systems because it's
significantly, absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit about that.
Yeah, batteries play a big role in how we are going to attack our energy shortage demands in the future. Like right now, what people really don't understand is if you have solar, you're not really producing power for yourself. You are really getting credits for the power that you send to the grid. So that's a big misnomer. A lot of people, have solar panels on their roof, and then there's an outage in their neighborhood, and then they're out as well. They're like, wait a minute, I have solar. But all you're doing is sending power to the grid and receiving credits for it. Unless you are totally detached from the grid, like you have a battery system, and you can make that a microgrid by being able to island or being able to detach from the grid and sustain yourself.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Yeah, so that's a really something that someone needs to think about when they're getting solar panels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People are surprised when they're out of power when they have solar panel on their roof. They're like, I don't understand. And at nighttime it doesn't know good anyway. So.
Oh, right, that's true. Yeah, once the sun goes down.
Absolutely. So this is 24/7, 365 power by implementing a microgrid. With more than 2 to 3 generation sources. Like I said, you could have wind and batteries. You can have hydrogen fuel cells. You can have linear generators, even diesel generators, which still believe it or not make up a large portion of the microgrids that are out there served with diesel generators.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to give a way that people can get in touch with your company or to see it. So if you have a phone number, something that they can go to.
Absolutely. My personal phone number, you can reach me directly, 760-925-5500. Again, 760-925-5500. That's my personal cell phone. Or you can, reach out to us at sales@Brevian. That's Brevian is B as in Bravo, R as in Romeo, E as in Edward, V as in Victor, I as in India, A as in Apple, N as in November, energy.com. Again, that's sales@brevianenergy.com. You can email us or you can visit our website. We have a lot of great information to digest. You can become more familiar with what microgrids are and how they act at brevianenergy.com.
And see, there was a purpose for me to ask you to put that out right now, because what this does is I can see so many job areas created by this. I mean, just the technology for developing cells and the software management and the data management on the backside of things. You have so many areas here, and this is part of the infrastructure rebuilding. Green technologies and all that are going out there. So what about that, the job market? What do you see happening with that? And is there a greater call for people?
No, I don't know after last night. That's another story. Our energy grid is going to be remade over the next 10 to 15 years. So they're going to be remade with renewable technology. Okay. And there is a desperate need for installers, designers, application engineers. There's a whole industry being born out there, and veterans are going to be called upon really to lead the charge in helping build out this workforce. One, because of the dedication that we receive by being in the military, learning to work in stressful environments and learning how to be team players. I think it's going to really require the skill set of veterans to make this happen.
Yeah, And as soon as you brought up the topic of veterans, I started thinking about, with the microgrid, you also are outside of the mainstream energy production network, and many times they're being attacked now, hacked, and those kinds of things. So this may actually be added layer of security.
Energy security, absolutely, yeah. This is great for energy security. So if you have, and you go into a city that has 1 million people and one power plant, you take out that power plant, you take out 1 million people. But if you go into a city that has 1 million people and have 1,000 power plants, because so many people are deploying their own, it's much more difficult to affect that with one strike. So having distributed energy is much more reliable. It's actually a lot cheaper because you're not worried about all of the transmission that you'd have to do from one centralized location, which has been a big barrier to progress, is those transmission lines. We have a real need for more transmission between regions right now. So deploying microgrids is a great way to address that problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you seemed pretty excited when you said the word hydrogen for fuel source.
Oh yes.
So why is that? What is it about hydrogen?
Well, I see the promise in hydrogen. Number one, I see it as a fuel source because we're pretty familiar with how gasoline works. We have the infrastructure already in place, and it could really be pretty similar to how we're already used to doing it, except we don't have to fill up every 300 miles. That could be filling up every 3,000 miles with the technology that's looking to be deployed, over the next, 5 to 10 years. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about the possibilities that we do with hydrogen. We use hydrogen fuel cells as well. There's no combustion. The only output from the thing is water. So they're much more sustainable than what we see and what we're using today.
Yeah, because one of the things that they have with these things with nuclear reactors, like just maybe it's a year ago, where they had the first successful sustained fusion reaction, to make helium out of hydrogen, and that's what it's making me think of, where you don't have nuclear waste, as byproducts, and so that's the thing that we have to really look towards, is with this whole thing about global warming and all of that. You have to have a few energy source that is not going to keep contributing to that problem, because we're making things worse, over time. I
don't think that the sources that we have right now are not the end all be all. I think they're the good for right now, but in the future, they're going to be, like you say, the fusion, I think, is going to be the holy grail. When you can have that type of power at room temperature without all of the hazards, and can just keep going, for all practical purposes forever. Who's going to deny that?
Yeah. And so what do you see? Anything exciting you see on the horizon from the technological perspective? Is it getting easier to have these microgrids, transporting them, getting them into zones where you have disasters, those kinds of things? And I'm
Absolutely.
not sure. Yeah. Okay.
There are several advances that are coming. Number one, they're making the panels. Right now, they're averaging about 500 watts of power that they generate. It's going to quadruple over the next 2 to 3 years, with the same size panel being able to produce about megawatt, kilowatts instead of just a couple watts. So you're going to see much more of that deploying. You're going to see a much more diverse set of energy storage technologies. Instead of just a lithium right now, you're going to see flow batteries, gel batteries. You're going to see things like supercapacitors that they're going to be rolling out. So innovation is definitely is strong at work in renewable energy right now. So we're just going to see how these things play out, and be ready to deploy them and take advantage of their utility.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of minutes to go. My producer's always on my back about making sure we have the show.
Efficiency.
So we're gonna have you back, I know, because the information you're providing I think is a clear vision to the future. And I just have to thank you for your service and for putting together a company that is really addressing a critical issue for us, and providing jobs and all that for our veterans and others. I'm really in awe of what you're doing. But in closing, what are some of the things that, and I want you to give your information again so people can actually see this on your website and make sure that they are following this. And for people who are looking for jobs and all of that, consider this as a new horizon that's really coming up. It's probably not so much of a new horizon. It's been here for a little bit, but it's actually going to blossom. It's not going to. I was speaking to one of the generals the other day, and he said, there's a difference between things growth and blossoming. And he said, weeds can grow, but flowers blossom. So this is a blossoming process. And so I really, I'm looking forward to more and more from you. But, just give me some closing thoughts on this whole area and, again, the contact information and what people need to know.
I know for me, one of the biggest things for us is, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a huge transition of our energy grid over the next 10 to 15 years. And one of the things, I don't want us to just be the off-takers of this energy. I want us to be part of the workforce. I want us to be part of the development of these technologies. I want us to be part of the ownership stake, because that's a big key and part of what we're doing. And some of the community projects that we're doing, we are actually setting up a special purpose vehicle that allows the community to invest into these projects. So, we want to do everything to help the community and not necessarily just the investor-owned utilities. And for us, you can get in touch with us again at Brevian Energy. BrevianEnergy.com is the website. You can reach me at 760-925-5500 is my number, or you can reach us at sales@BrevianEnergy.com. We'd love to have that conversation with you.
Yeah, and I want to have you back on for a special show, and for you to start talking a little bit about the educational requirements, why it's important to go to school, why it's and to get the training. For
Absolutely.
This. Yeah, so I think that's really a key point. And then
whenever you want to have me, Colonel Arnold, I am more than happy to be on anytime with you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we're going to move on to the next segment. Stay with us, and thank you so much, Rod Matthewson. Happy Veterans Day.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello, hello. It's 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, Prostate Cancer Awareness, and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. November 11th, remember, is Veterans Day. And thank all of your veterans and your family, those of you who are your neighbors, your friends, your co-workers, for their service to this nation. I am U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Veteran Medic, retired Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, as well as your America's Heroes Group digital media talk show host and the president and CEO of American Heroes Group partner organization, ADA-PHP, the African Diaspora Association of Public Health Professionals, LLC. I have a special guest tonight, and this person I've known for some years, and he's a close friend, but he is more than that. Dr. Thomas Britt, MD, is a U.S. Army veteran extraordinaire and a radiologist by training. He also ran a program at Chicago State University for the Masters of Health program, and he actually also was over the basic sciences division for the university. He has helped many, many people on their career tracks to advance and to become strong academicians and essential parts of the public health infrastructure. So today I want to discuss his military career and the medical career that he's had, and his work with nuclear armaments in Germany during Vietnam, as long as he doesn't have to kill me after that. But he has an incredible story to tell, and one of perseverance and strength that I think younger people need to hear. Even some of us older people need to hear that, get our minds back on track to doing something good. So with that, how are you doing, Dr. Britt?
I'm doing just fine. You're kind of surprised. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Very well.
You kind of surprised me. I had no idea that I had to go through this, but I think I can handle it.
Tell me about your beginning in the military and why you did it, why you decided to do it.
Well, actually, my beginning in the military started when I was a junior in high school. I wasn't part of the military at all, but my brother took a correspondence course in electronics when he was in high school, and he was a few years older than me. And so some of the basic stuff with respect to electronics and electricity, I kind of already knew, and the shock factor of dealing with that wasn't a shock factor at all because my brother made it simple. But anyway, I went to the military, did my basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. And after my basic training, my MOS, which is Military Occupational School, I went to the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, and I spent every bit of 32 weeks training on a missile system that had a nuclear warhead. My training was quite extensive. I knew every part of the missile, including a programming test station, a system test station, and some other test station. And I worked on every part of the missile except for its nuclear warhead. The missile I worked on was a Persian missile system. It was an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, and I was stationed in 2 or 3 places in Germany. I arrived initially to a place called Kaiserslautern. We call it K-Town because Kaiserslautern is a mouthful. And then from there, I think I went to Pforzheim and I went to Messau. And so I was kind of in different places in Germany working on the Persian missile system. What else can I tell you? I hate to say this, but my sergeant was a sergeant in the Army, but I also had people who taught me who were actually from NASA and National Aeronautics Space Administration. But my sergeant told me that he never did like me. I think it had something to do with who I was, an African American. But he told me on the day that I finished that he gave me hell, but he also told me that I graduated at the top of the class. That's about it for now. I should say,
yeah. And when you're saying the nuclear warheads, I was thinking it's like I thought I was looking for something that would top someone saying that don't jump out of a perfectly good airplane, with a parachute, but standing next to a nuclear warhead, I think tops that one.
Yeah, nuclear warhead was pretty devastating. My training when I was in the military. Well, I should say this. I was the only one in my class. I hate to say it, but I was the only one in my class. But my training actually cost more than $1 million. And this was a few years ago. $1 million is not play money right now, but it wasn't play money then. And so that's about it. I think I can talk a little bit more if I had some questions.
Yeah. One thing is I'm wondering, with that training that you had about nuclear weapons and the technologies and that kind of thing, is that what sort of sparked your interest in going into radiology? Because I'm wondering there's a bridge there,
No, actually, it had nothing to do with it at all. When I was in medical school, I did an externship at a hospital in Los Angeles. I think it was called Martin Luther King Hospital in Compton, LA. Okay. And what I liked about radiology was the lifestyle, or what I thought was a lifestyle. I had an instructor, and I think I did about 8 weeks in LA at Martin Luther King Hospital. And the instructor, the doctors, the residents, and the medical students and externship people, they would come in early so they could do the different radiologic procedures. And then around 10 o'clock or so, the doctor would pop in, bright-eyed and fancy-tailed, and he always had his little newspaper. And so we would report out to him what we thought we saw. If what we saw was what he saw and agreed with, then we sign off on it. And then we go to lunch, and we had an afternoon conference. And after the afternoon conference, somewhere around 2:30, 3 o'clock, the doctor would always grab his or act like he was grabbing his golf clubs, and he would take a little swing. He said, "Well, I'm about to be out of here." And I said, "Wait a minute. At 11 and you're leaving at 2:30 and you got a smile on your face." I said, "That's the lifestyle that I think I want." So that's what made the decision. My missile training had nothing to do with it. What's interesting is I went from how to kill people to how to diagnose their radiographic problem.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing story. And as you were mentioning that and talking about that, I was thinking the history that you had within the military. And this is what I used to tell people when they were joining my unit, and I would say that I would sit down with them the first day and I say, "I see your last name. I don't even need to know your first name. But what I do need to know before I know your first name is what school you're going to." And they would look at me and go like, "School I'm going to? I have to be in a school to join your unit?" And and being in the military, I said, you have to be in a school from my unit. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I said, they said, what if I don't know what I want? Here's a book. You come back tomorrow and tell me which school you're going to be in. And they go like, why is it so important for me to go to school? Because I would tell them, I said, because you have a free opportunity for free education. And if you're stupid enough not to take that, then I don't want you standing next to me in the front line because you don't have anything to live for. You need to bring your skills to the table and take on the challenge of getting trained in something to do something good. And it could be, in a formal school, it could be in a technical school or, a place, but you need to be doing something with your life so that you can further yourself. The military gives you that opportunity as a bridge. And
Damon, on my email, the page of my email, I talk about now is the time, but most importantly, I talk about it's just a statement, and the statement is education is the foundation of a nation.
Yeah.
On all of my emails that go out, that's on the thing. I have my name and some other little stuff that kind of says who I am, but the main thing is education is the foundation of a nation. And if you're not in school, you're not in some kind of improved learning situation, you're not educated. And if you're not educated, you won't go for long. As a lot of people think the NFL stands for National Football League, but the NFL stands for not for long. You won't.
Yeah, right. And they talk about all the injuries now. You see, athletes leaving earlier in their careers than ever before. But one thing, so you went into the public health arena. Now, that's a topic you can talk about for 48 hours, I know, without stopping. So what brought you into the public health arena and into the role of becoming, the chair of the department at Chicago State University over health sciences?
Well, actually, one day I was on campus with a good friend of mine, a classmate of mine, and he said, Britt, we like to use last names too. He said, Britt, why don't we, me and you, do something to distinguish ourselves from our classmates? Because, once you pass the super comp, you're coming out of that bad boy. So he said, why don't we do something different? And I said, well, what you want to do? He said, well, why don't we become public health physicians? I said, cool, what do we have to do? He says, we got to go to school and register. He said, is that all we got to do? I said, let's go right now. So we walked over there to the School of Public Health and we enrolled. That is the reason why I went into public health. But then as I thought about it, if you are a physician and you learn it in public health, what better way of making a real contribution to our community, our Black community, our community at large, to know how health and public health intertwines. So that's why I did it, Damon.
Yeah, what been some of your experiences, or what are you proud about, that you've engaged in as a public health professional? Because I know we've gone to different meetings. We've gone to the American Public Health Association meetings, the American Association of Public Health Physicians, those kinds of things. But what do you feel is something that made you feel good about being in that arena?
Training people, educating people about public health. I ran the department of, we used to be called the Department of Health Studies. I tried to get the name changed, didn't happen, but subsequently it did happen. So we became, instead of the Department of Health Studies, we became the Department of Public Health. And we wanted public health to be the name for also we had a community health program as in addition to a public health program. And so we wanted to change the name. So they have been successful in carrying out some of the views that I had. But what really stimulates me is teaching. I love to teach, and I do pretty good. My students really like me. At least I think they do. But just to know that you're part of the educational process and that your students remember you for a very, very long time, and they speak fondly of you, you pushed them. I gave my students hell. I wanted them to be as sharp as they possibly could be. And that means I had to push them. I pushed them beyond their comfort level. I assumed that they had a comfort level, and I pushed them beyond that. and they are so grateful for that. And when they tell me that, it rings, it touches me. That Dr. Britt, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. When I hear that, that means a lot to me, Damon.
Mhm. It's almost like, I had a visual of, you throw a stone in the middle of a pond and you see all the rings go out, and you just don't know how much of influence you have, over the fabric of society by doing things like that. And I've heard a lot of students talk very positively about you, about the things that you helped them with and the accomplishments they were able to achieve, because if not but for you. And so you were teaching on an undergraduate and graduate level as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you see as some of the major public health challenges right now in our community-based bases? And you have rural communities, you have urban communities, so they're different settings and that kind of thing. But what do you think we need to be focusing on? And what are the opportunities for veterans to get involved in public health or in education in this area?
I'm gonna throw a little bit of that back at you, but
Mhm.
to answer some of those questions or to discuss it. But what really, really bothers me right here, right now, today,
Mhm.
that our former, not our, well, our former and our new president-elect is saying that he's going to give the Department of Public Health and public health issues, etc. We're talking about RFK Jr. He's
Mhm.
going to put him in charge of public health. And
Mhm.
one of the things that he touts all the time is that he does not believe in vaccines. He
Oh.
doesn't believe in that at all. And
Mhm.
I'm frightened by the fact that he wants to cut back all of that, all of the things we've been able to do. And this is part of public health. To get your vaccination for measles, mumps, and rubella and diphtheria, etc. Those things are very important. And in this country, some of those diseases that we get vaccinated for, in this country, they are eradicated.
Mhm.
But if you have the audacity to not get those vaccinations, then you can't send your kid to public school, and private school don't want you because you're going to interrupt payment for private school tuition, etc. And so you have to have them to come now and say we're not going to do that anymore. That's frightening. That's
Yeah.
frightening. And we have an example of how frightening that is. We have had a few people who've decided they were not going to get their measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination. And those people have been living fairly okay in America because most of those diseases are just about controlled by the fact that we have vaccination. But there has been measles outbreak. Go back in time, probably in the last 4 years, we had some measles outbreak in America. And the reason why we had them was those people chose not to get vaccinated, and they came in contact with people from other countries who did not have that vaccination, probably because it wasn't available, but they infected. And so I see down the line, if we're not having vaccinations, that a lot of the diseases that we have been able to deal with effectively or control, they may come back, and they may come back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I'm really concerned about.
Yeah. And we have global warming too. I mean, with, the different storms that are going on. I just had someone on and we were talking about the microgrids and the need for energy production and all that. But there's such a great public health need that occurs immediately. I, responded to Katrina and Rita, and we have, Hurricane Helene. We have all these hurricanes, and it seems to be growing in intensity. We have tornadoes in parts of the Midwest. We never had them there before. And it's going to require, people who are involved in emergency response activities and that kind of thing. But a lot of that is public health roles, making sure that people get their medications, they get, into a secure area, making sure that they have adequate medical coverage and those kinds of things. And that's all part of a public health network. So what do you see from the standpoint of our need to start addressing that more seriously?
Well, we got to start soon because January the 20th, 2025 is around the corner. We're in November now, so November will be over in 29, 24 days or so. And then we have December, but then January the 20th at 12 noon, we'll have administration. Between now and his inauguration, his second inauguration, he is going to be planning out how he's going to do and what he's going to do in his first 100 days. Equally as important, what he's going to do day one. And so we have to be planning. We have to be, public health officials have to be planning. We have to, I used to say a lot when I was at Chicago State, that there is a principle that we have to adhere to. It's called the MAP principle. MAP stands for Maya Angelou principle. When someone tells you what they're going to do, when they show you what they're going to do, believe them the first time. And it's more than just belief. If you see, if you hear, and you operate with the MAP principle, you have to enact a plan of action. So we have a plan of action, we should have a plan of action knowing what they're planning on doing, so that we can make sure that what they're planning on doing does not become fertile and leads us into disaster. We cannot have people saying that we should not have vaccination. We can have them saying that it's free speech in America for now. We need to emphasize for now, but we have to do something about what they want to do. And one of the things they want to do is cancel vaccination.
What would you advise some of the veterans, and the people who are in military service to do now? I mean, if they wanted to go into the public health arena and get jobs like at, the state, the city, the county, and right now we know that there is a crisis as far as the number of people that are being required for those fields. And we lost about 50% of our public health workforce during COVID-19. We are, have doctors and nurses are going to be retiring. Part of it is, the age, they're getting ready to retire, but also people just leaving the field. 30% of doctors are thinking about leaving in 2 to 3 years, and 40% of nurses in the next 3 to 5 years. So if people want to go into those fields, why should they go into it? And why is it so important for us to make sure that we have adequate numbers of people in public health?
Well, we are a growing nation, and we have the people that you just mentioned who are retiring. Some are retiring because they just want to be retired, and they're old enough to retire. They build up a pension, etc. But what happens if those persons aren't adequately replaced? I should mention, while we're talking about this, is we now know that graduating medical students, and we just talk about medical students, we can talk about it all down the line. I'm particularly familiar with what's going on with medical students. Because of the abortion bans, we have medical students who will not apply for for OB-GYN training in those states where there's an abortion ban, because who's going to teach them? And so they're not applying. Some people, medical students who are looking at what they want to do, are changing what they want to do because of these abortion bans. If I go to a state where I can't get the adequate training to deal with someone who's having a miscarriage, and my fear is that if I treat them, I'm going to go to jail myself, they decide they don't want to do it. And some are deciding, period, that they don't want to be bothered with OB-GYN. We have OB-GYN people who are no longer doing OB. They're doing gynecological surgery, etc., but they're not doing OB. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But what I'm saying is we're going to have growing, decreasing numbers of physicians who are not going to be adequately trained. And so now I think abortion may become nationwide in this country, and that's going to be a tremendous problem. We have women who are having miscarriages. These women want to be pregnant. They got pregnant. They want to have a baby. But because they have a miscarriage, doctors don't want to treat them. They're telling them to go wait out in the hall or go wait out in the court, go back to your car, come back when you're almost dying. That is not going to work. And that's part of public health. And public health, the American Association of Public Health Physicians, which you are the immediate past president, I'm the past president. We have to address that. Truth told, is I'm writing an article right now called News Brief, and I'm addressing that same thing. We have to have organizations like the AAPHP, American Association of Public Health Physicians. We have to have the AMA involved. We should even have the ABA, the American Bar Association, involved. So we have a lot to do, and it's being thrust upon us because of our, I don't know, what should I say, Damon? How can I say this nice and clean? We have some lies and some misunderstanding. And those lies and misunderstanding has led us to what has happened recently as last night and continuing into the day. But those problems exist if we don't address them, and we got to address them. And
but what if I'm a veteran or a medical student, and I want to, go into, to get my master's in public health, be trained in public health? What advice would you give them, as far as their first steps? Because it's going to be a great need. And I know a lot of the local health departments, I'm on the State Board of Health now, and there are local health departments that are seeking people now. They have to have those replacements in order to stay afloat and stay functional. So what do you think it needs to be done to encourage people to follow this profession?
Well, you have to have, people need to, one, be aware. And then if they are aware and you support that awareness with conferences and what have you, then perhaps you can bring them into that profession. This is something that you have to have some passion for, because you're taking care of a lot of people, and you need to have some compassion for it. But first you have to become aware. And to become aware, you need to be involved with people who are actually doing it, and you see some benefits in your being involved. I went into public health because it was an opportunity to distinguish myself from my classmates. Truth be told, is when I did it, I did my MD and MPH at the same time, along with my partner. There was one other person. So there was only 3 of us who did that at the same time. And we have people doing it now, and they have a structured program where you can go and spend an extra year or whatever to get your MD and your MPH. But for anyone who's outside of being a physician who wants to do the MPH program, they need to be aware that that's possible and that they have some passion for it, and then they should go do it. There's nothing to lose by learning. You lose by not learning, and you lose by not being aware. What we have to do is that every chance we get, we must make people aware of things, and then we have to support that awareness with programs that will enhance and take that awareness to fruition.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we're running out of time, and I am so happy to have had you, Dr. Britt. You're a wealth of information, but again, thank you for your career, and I salute you as a veteran, and happy Veterans Day. And I think what you're doing is something that people need to emulate and help people go through the educational process, because that's the kind of people you're producing are helping people, and that's a phenomenal thing to do. So stay with us. We're going on to another segment, and we will be back very shortly, and we have a brief commercial interruption.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arnold.
Thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
X, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello. It's 6:30 p.m. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, Prostate Cancer Awareness, and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. It's also November 11th is Veterans Day. Make sure you reach out and thank a veteran for their service to the country, and make sure that you show them your appreciation. I am your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Veteran Medic, retired Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. I have a very special panelist today who's written an extraordinarily well-written article. And our panelist is Fred Schulte. He's a senior correspondent for KFF Health News. Kaiser Family Foundation, KFF, is a nonprofit foundation that does research, journalism, and communications programs. It focuses on major healthcare issues in the United States. Today's discussion is Fred's KFF Health News article, The Medicare Advantage Influence Machine. The new court filings and lobbying reports reveal an industry drive to tamp down critics and retain billions of dollars in overcharges. Hello, Fred. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine. How you doing, Dr. Arnold?
Great. And you wrote this article on September 30th, 2024 with Holly Hacker.
Right.
What was your motivation for writing this article, and why is it important?
Well, it was about the Medicare Advantage program, which if you're on Medicare, you can go into, you can get a supplemental plan, or you can join one of these private insurance plans that are basically run by big insurance companies. And it's open enrollment season now, so that thought. And there's also been a lot of controversy about whether these plans are overbilling the government, and so. And there's some concern in Congress that this is going on, and there needs to be a crackdown on it. So we decided to look at what the industry is doing and how they're trying to use their considerable political power to well, I don't want to say to silence critics, but to get their message out to the public at large. And their message is that they're a very valuable service, and that they don't want anybody or they don't necessarily want regulators to be cracking down on them. And they dispute the fact that they're getting overpaid. And now the government says that it's paying these plans much more than if the same person was in a in standard in the original Medicare, and they want take steps to crack down on them. A lot of these are for-profit plans, and the critics are saying that they're making a lot of money, they're making too much money, and that they're kind of taking the taxpayers for a ride.
Yeah, because you really talked about them as being a politically potent juggernaut in the article, and that really brings in the image of the range of power they have, and that you mentioned that 33 million seniors were aggressively being brought into these programs. I remember, there was one particular program, I won't mention the name on the air, but they were saying, well, you're a veteran, you can get, if you come with us, because I'm already on the TRICARE because I retired from the military, and they were saying, if you come with us, we can give you $125 back a month. And I was like, what's your incentive to do that? And I never did join, but I was just trying to figure out why were they trying to pull me in to this system in that way? But you had mentioned also in the article about there were so many different ways that they were penetrating the media, the Super Bowl, those kinds of things in 2023.
Right. Well, I'm sure anybody that watches TV has seen these ads. I mean, and during certain times, I mean, there's just a flood of these ads, and sometimes they have, big name celebrities or former athletes. I don't want to mention any names, but there's some well-known athletes who are out there trying to recruit people to join these programs. I think some of the critics are saying, well, there's a lot of money being spent, and that just kind of shows you that how much money there is out here. And a Super Bowl ad, when you run an ad during the Super Bowl, I mean, you're talking about big money. And so that I think that concerned a lot of people. But I think sometimes, the industry says that, overwhelmingly the people that join these plans are happy with the service they get. But I think the critics say that, well, a lot of these plans save money by cutting back on the number of doctors you can see and the number of hospitals you can go to. And that if you get really sick and you want to go to a certain hospital because you think they have better treatment, well, you may be stuck with only being allowed to go to the hospital that's in their network. And sometimes these networks get narrower and narrower, and some hospitals are saying that the health plans don't pay their bills, and so they're refusing to accept them. So you can get a lot of problems if you're in one of these plans, and all of a sudden they won't take your doctor or they won't take the hospital you want to go to.
And there was something else you described that was really worrisome to me, was the idea of a revolving door, for senior CMS officials and personnel, and how they were sort of cycling back and forth between these programs and federal government.
Right. Well, I think when, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is in Baltimore, it's the Medicare agency that basically runs the program. And, I think people that work there get a lot of expertise in running and regulating the program. And then they do, in fact, leave the agency and then go to work for the same plans that they used to regulate. And, this is kind of something that happens in government routinely. And the critics of this sort of thing say that, well, if you should be cracking down on these plans, but maybe you're not, because you're thinking about, well, in a year I might want to get a job with one of them, and they pay really well, because you're talking about, this is a $462 billion a year program, with a lot of very, very big insurance companies. And so there's a lot of and when you work for the government, you do develop a lot of expertise that's valuable to the private sector. But I think that the people that are critical of this want to make sure that there isn't people pulling punches because they're going to get a job down the road.
Yeah, and one of the things that is really deeply worrisome about this as well was Senator Chuck Grassley, in your article you mentioned, a Republican from Iowa, said Medicare Advantage fraud is wasting taxpayer dollars to the tune of billions. And what worries me about that is, the taxpayer dollars, and we're losing billions of dollars. But the question is the quality of care. Is that actually going to take care of people or not? And from what you were mentioning to me about, well, if you have a Super Bowl ad, I know that's billion. I'm not sure if I would say charge, but I know it's in the millions to get any space or time.
Well, Grassley's been Senator Grassley's been a long time critic. I mean, he's generally been very supportive of whistleblowers. And in the Medicare Advantage program, there's been a lot of whistleblowers who've that worked for the industry, and then they say that, well, the plan's ripping off the government and charging too much, or upcoding, as they call it, so that it's a little complicated. And the plans are, the government is paying these plans based on how sick you are. So the idea is you don't want these plans refusing to take people because they've got some kind of an illness that could be expensive to treat, but the health plan doesn't want to take somebody that's going to be expensive to treat unless you give them extra money. But what can happen is that they have an obvious incentive to exaggerate the level of sickness you have. So, like, if they pay you one rate for diabetes, but if you have diabetes with complications, they pay you a lot more money. Well, there's an incentive for them to say, well, yeah, you got complications there, so they can get more money. So there were a lot of these whistleblower cases that were being brought under the Federal False Claims Act, which is a thing where you can file a federal lawsuit on behalf of the government and try to get the company to refund the money, under these kinds of cases, you can a health plan that engages in this overbilling can get treble damages, 3 times the amount that you sold. So it can be very lucrative, and the whistleblower gets a piece of the action, so to speak. So it can be a good way for the government to recover money. But anyway, Grassley's been very supportive of these efforts because he doesn't want to see the government getting ripped off. So I think what's happened over the years is there's just audit after audit after audit after audit that tends to be finding these same kinds of overpayments that are related to this upcoding or this exaggerating of how sick people are. And they're doing things like they're going through medical files, and they pull your medical file and they look in there and see if they can find some diagnosis that they can put on your record and then charge the government for. And I think that what Grassley was saying there is that this has been going on a long time, and he and some other people on the Hill want to see an end to it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that we have senators that are paying attention to this and are responding in the right way to try to bring some light to these issues. And one of the things that was really sinful to me was when you were mentioning that you were sort of echoing some of the things that you said about these companies allegedly skimping on vital health care. But also sometimes even dumping thousands of members off these plans because they're not profitable. So if the person can't bring a case to the table, a medical health care case to the table, they'll drop them because then you're not bringing me enough money. That seems to be horrible.
Right. Well, a lot of these are big, they're big insurance companies, and they have contracts with the government for, cities all over the country. And, some cities that they have, they have more members or fewer members or something. But some of these markets just, they're not making enough money. They think they're not making enough money. So they can just go, well, we're leaving. And, it could be really bad, when you're a senior citizen and all of a sudden this happens to you. And, you got a lot of people on this program that, in their 80s or something like that. You don't need this hassle, and, it's complicated enough trying to figure out what's going on here. And all of a sudden you get this letter from the health plan saying, you know what, we're leaving. And
wow.
Wait a minute, man. A lot of people like maybe our age, you're dealing with your parents sometimes got to deal with this. And so it can be, it can be very, very confusing. But, I think if you step back a little bit and you look that if you set up a program and you invite private for-profit insurance companies to come into it, they're going to want to make a profit, and you can't really stop them from, leaving the market that they're not that they consider is not profitable. But the problem is that's between, you know, the insurance company and the government, and you're the patient. You're caught in the middle here, and this is not good.
Yeah, not at all. And then, you know, one of the things that there was a, you know, they had someone, you mentioned, you know, spokesperson for the Better Medicare Alliance was talking about the open enrollment period. It, you know, starts in mid-October, but they were afraid that there would be fewer benefits and fewer plan choices. So that seems like it's a changing landscape now. It's almost like, you know, I was thinking about in a sense of insurance companies for property. And it's like, well, you know, you live in a flood zone, so we're going to cut out the flood insurance.
Right. Yeah. Well, this came up because, you know, basically the Medicare agency is saying, you know, well, we're getting all this criticism for paying too much to these health plans, so we got to cut back. We're going to cut back what we're going to pay them. And then the Better Medicare Alliance represents the you know, well, they say they're a grassroots organization, but, you know, they have a lot of industry. I mean, they're basically the industry. And they're saying, well, if you cut back on how much you're paying us, then we're going to have to cut back on the services that we offer. And that's where you get into the influence game, because, you know, all of a sudden, thousands of senior citizens are being told they're not going to get health care. And they complain to their congressman, and then you have, you know,
back to CMS. Right.
Yeah, you have a big to do. And I think one of the things that, you know, is that the CMS, I mean, you know, they're regulators, and they're supposed to take into account and make sure that they take care of taxpayers' money, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
But on the other hand, they want to provide services to people on Medicare. So
right.
When they don't want to find out that well, such and such an insurance plan in like in Chicago or somebody's saying, well, we're just going to dump 10,000 members, and because it's chaos, you know, it causes chaos, and they really don't want to do that. So I think some people that are critical of the agency say maybe that they can get pushed around a little bit. And that's part of that. That's why we were looking at, you know, the influence that the plans have.
Yeah, because some of this is really delegated from the federal government to states, right? I mean, you know, in Illinois, we have Health and Family Services and that kind of thing, and they sort of oversee the programs as well. And in Illinois, I think we really decreased. I don't want to quote the wrong number, but it was somewhere in the teens, and now we're down to, you know, in the single digits of these providers and insurance companies, because they are consolidating and getting a larger piece of the market share. So they actually have more and more influence on how this is being distributed as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's what some of the critics are worried about, that if, you know, you're totally reliant on these big companies, and then, you know, then you're totally reliant on them. And then if the company decides that they don't want to be in the market anymore, or they don't want to do this, and then, you know, and what you really want to do is you want to protect the patients, because that's what your real concern is. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that you know, with this concept of privatizing, you know, if you whether it's this, you know, space program or healthcare, if you invite private companies to take over the business, then, you know, you're going to have to figure out how to deal with them and make sure that they're treating the patients right, and they're not doing things like overbilling and that sort of thing. But primarily, you want to, you know, ensure, you know, what you call continuity of care. You don't want to have these situations where an elderly person is suddenly, you know, goes to the hospital and suddenly they're refusing to pay. And, you know, that's just, you know, how terrible that is when you get a situation like that. And, you know, it's scary that, you know, you're going to get stuck with this huge bill, and it's just not good.
Yeah, because, you know, I was actually, you know, in the state of Illinois, so I was running the Illinois Department of Public Health, and there was a revolving door policy in place, you know, and it seems like in this kind of setting, you really want to be careful about conflicts of interest, you know, with people being able to rotate back in and out of the industry. And it seems like we need to have some stronger regulations around that or something. that is preventing that.
Right, that's in the Medicaid program. I think with the Illinois Department of Public Health. Well, I think that all around the country, Medicaid programs have. Because in fact, we came up to Chicago once years ago to talk about that with Quentin Young was there.
Quentin Young, yes, I know him.
A good guy, but anyway, that was one of the things that was going on, is that the various states were turning their Medicaid programs over to private companies, and the private companies were hiring people out of state agencies like crazy. And like you're saying, the revolving door, and it did have, real conflicts of interest, because some of these plans, were just not up to snuff. Some of them were just, very quickly thrown together by investors, and, the quality of care wasn't that good, but they would be hiring all these people from the government and from the state government. And so it raised that same conflict of interest.
Yeah. What do you see as some potential solutions to this? I mean, where do you think, people should be focusing? Should we be writing congressional members? How do we get this resolved? Because, we do have budgetary problems all over the country. I mean, state, local government, federal government, where they're having shortfalls in the amount of money they have to actually expend on different needs within the communities and within the country. So how should we approach this problem as taxpayers?
Well, you want to make your voice heard. And, I think that, one of the problems that, and why there's influence, is that these big companies, they have a lot of influence, and they can, if they don't like something, then they can get, 50 members of Congress to write to the Medicare agency and tell them to quit bothering my client. But what you want to do is you want to be able to try to equal that out somehow. And so, you have to you have to be the squeaky wheel, and if something happens to you and they're trying to charge you too much, or you have to just keep complaining. And it's an unfortunate situation, but you've had a lot of these health plans that, required prior authorization for some service, and, your doctor says you need some medical service, but the plan says, well, no, we got to check this out first. And then you wait and wait and wait. And then they say no, and then you have to appeal. And people can lose interest, and you can't do that. I mean, you have to fight for yourself and represent yourself, or, get a family member or something and keep bugging them until they do what they're supposed to.
Yeah, and that's a really extremely, extremely important point. Because I'm a physician, and many times patients come in and they are reluctant to come in to begin with, because they think, they say they think you're going to find something, and it's like, well, yeah, we want to look. So if we do see something, we can, do something about it. And if they are going through too many regulations and requirements, and especially if they're senior citizens or will have Alzheimer's disease or dementia, those things kind of setting in, it's very difficult for them to interact with the system and to follow all these procedural steps and making sure they fill this form out and that form out. And so that there are some organizations out there that are directed at care delivery, where they follow the person and their advocates that are out there. But if someone doesn't have that, it can be really daunting to try to go up against a major company. If government has problems with controlling them, think about the average citizen.
Right. Absolutely. And but you have to just try to complain to as many, and call. There are, like as you mentioned, there's agencies that do help the public, Medicare advocacy agencies in most cities, and you have to write to them or call them or something, and hopefully they'll help you out. But you're right, it can be terrible trying to navigate all of this.
Yeah, because my big fear is that if you have a delay in care, that if they have something like a cancer that can progress from stage 2 to 3 to 4, this is something that your delay in time is actually worsening their prognosis.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we have, in fact, I mean, over the time years ago, we saw a number of health plans where you had that, where, somebody would go and go to the doctor and say that you got something hurts, and then they give you some pills or something, and you go back and say, now it's not working, and you keep going and going and going, and they give you some cheap pill, and then finally you got fed up. And you say, I'm going to another doctor, and then they tell you, well, all along you had cancer, and it's progressed, and that you don't want that to happen to you. So that's another reason why you have the bottom line is you really have to take responsibility, not only for your own health, but unfortunately you have to take responsibility for your own health care too, or have a family member or find somebody to advocate for you as you go through the system, because you're right, it's very daunting, very scary. Not to mention, it can cost you can get threatened with these bills and things, which is really scary when you don't have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think your article is really very incredibly written, and it's I really enjoyed reading it. Maybe is there a place that people can go to find your articles that website or?
Yeah, it's KFF Health News, and you can just Google it, and then all of our articles are on the website, KFF Health News.
Yeah, it's extraordinary articles that you're putting out. I was actually dipping into a few other ones. I ran out of time because we had the show. I was looking at articles this morning and this afternoon. But I think we have a wealth of information to have you back on. To keep talking about topics. But so any final words on this topic that you think people just need to keep in their head, or make sure that they are paying attention to?
Yeah, I think we as taxpayers need to do whatever we can to make sure that when we need Medicare, that it's available, and that there's enough, that isn't all being wasted. And I think that the taxpayers need to know that the government is taking care of their money, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we often hear a lot about Social Security. Is that going to run out? But we never talk about Medicare and Medicaid and how it's being impacted.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of money. Like I said, the Medicare Advantage program, uses $460 billion a year. So there's a lot of money, and I think everybody wants to see it run efficiently, and they want to make sure that people get the care that they need. You don't want to have too much care, but you don't want to have too little care, and you don't want to have these programs figuring out how to rip off the government. That's not good.
No. Well, thank you so much. It's always Fred. It's always a pleasure talking to you again, Fred Schulte, the senior correspondent for KFF Health News. Stay with us. We have another show coming up, but thank you for your service to our nation, to the people of the nation, and our veterans.
Thank you. Okay. Take care.
Take care.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Heroes Group, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello, hello. Welcome. It's 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Family Caregiver, Prostate Cancer Awareness, and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. Also, November 11th is Veterans Day. Reach out to your veterans and give them a hand. Make sure that you acknowledge their accomplishments and the sacrifices they've made for this nation. I am your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Veteran Medic, retired Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. I have two people who are on today that are extraordinary. They do things for veterans every day. They probably wake up thinking about veterans, go to sleep thinking about veterans, and during the day, they're with the veterans. So really extraordinary people. It's our partner, Adelina Marshall. She's a VA mental health RN. I've gone on walks with her. She's walked me into the dirt. I mean, she can walk from place to place. I'm not going to even talk about how far she took me the last time we took a walk. And then we had our guest panelist, Carolina Stewart, an RN, a Master's of Science in Nursing, and a licensed clinical nurse leader. Our discussion today is going to be about the current VA nurses' work, conditions, and what needs to improve the next presidential administration. In our work, the nurses at VA, if you haven't been there, they work hard. I mean, hard to make sure that our veterans are taken care of. They are like surrogate family. And many of them, some of them are veterans themselves, but they have a heart for veterans, period. So I just have to applaud you on your services and thank you for your service to our veterans. So I'm going to start this out. And Alina, do you want to go first and just talk about the topic? This is a topic I think that's hitting a lot of fields. The public health workforce is being diminished, nurses in every discipline, but especially in the VA system. We've been talking about this for some time. the need to have more staffing and make sure we have enough coverage to take care of our veterans?
So, as many of you may know, that the VA right now has a budget crunch, and we are unable to hire the amount of staff needed to support the programs that the VA, the great programs that the VA has for our veterans. We're hoping that in the next administration that our veterans and the VA will come first, that they will realize that all the wonderful programs that they have, that it has to be supported with enough staff to deliver the care that our veterans so dearly deserve. Right now, they're filling positions on as needed basis, and so that's for the entire hospitals. So they might need EMS, and they will hire that department over possibly hiring our RNs. Of course, we need our EMS personnel. We need our social workers. We need everything that our veterans need to help support them on their road to recovery. We want our veterans to come to the VA to get their care, to be supported by the VA, and we encourage them to come in. We try to avoid any delays in their care. And it's important that if they're not going to keep their appointments, to cancel it so that we can get other veterans in that slot.
Yeah, Carolina, so what do you see as the problems, the work conditions that you're confronting every day? And what do how, maybe you could describe that before we go on to what needs to be improved. But what is it that nurses are confronted with on a daily basis?
Hi, thank you for having me again.
Sure.
One of the main problems that I see, and I have to speak from both the bedside as well as the community care aspect. I was a bedside nurse for about 10 years until about 2 years ago when I transitioned over into community care, and even still being able to communicate and speak with the nurses at the bedside. A lot of the same issues still revolve around not utilizing our staffing that we do have appropriately by ways of putting additional task loads and things on the nurses, steadily piling onto the things that they are required to do and not necessarily giving them the resources that they need to be able to do it efficiently. One of the main things we've been battling for years is a nurse to patient ratio, which California currently is the only state that does have a mandatory nurse to patient ratio. That is different, specific to each unit, but it identifies the needs or what we call the acuity level of care of our veterans to really determine the most appropriate nurse to be able to deal with those needs and not kind of overload them or allow for any room where there is oversight of, certain things. So staffing is always a main one, and being able to have those resources available for us to be able to function properly.
Yeah. So what is the ratio normally like? How is that sort of play out? I know you said it's different for different units.
Yeah. Well, for California, it can be as small as, say, for instance, in their operating room, they may have one nurse to one patient, and that's their ratio. Or it might be a little bit more in their medical surgical unit, which might be one nurse every 5 patients. Right now in our hospitals, we're seeing more so anywhere between one nurse to between 5, maybe 6, and on extreme levels, 7 patients. And that is more of an extreme nature, but it does occur at times, and more frequently than not, are we at the higher end of that ratio.
Yeah, because sometimes those patients need a lot of services. I mean, it's not like you're taking care of someone, sitting at home.
Yeah.
You're giving them medical care, medications, and making sure that the vital signs and all those things are intact, and that's a lot of pressure.
And most importantly, outside of caring for our veterans at the bedside, we're working with them to get them home. And in me being in my role in community care now, while they're in the hospital, we're communicating with the other nurses, the other interdisciplinary team, to really see what is it that they need to be able to best meet their recovery needs. And in doing that in the hospital, it's more than just passing out the medication and going to the next. We want to talk to our veterans about what they're taking, why they're taking it, how can we best maintain our health once we leave the hospital. And that takes time. So I think that's a big portion of that nurse-patient ratio, is really factoring in the time that our nurses need to be able to really educate and spend that time with the veterans.
That's really critical, because if you don't know how to take your medications, I remember I was in an emergency room one time, and this one patient came back in, and she had been there for an earlier shift, and the person was really feeling sick, and she was vomiting and all those kinds of things. And they said, well, you're sick, but what have you been doing? What have you? And she, ended up getting suppositories. These were vaginal suppositories for a yeast infection, but she was swallowing them.
Oh, my.
Because she didn't have somehow the communication didn't go through, correctly. So she was actually swallowing these things, and that caused, a miscommunication in education, or a breakdown that didn't occur before she left. And
Absolutely.
so that was really a terrible thing. So what do you think needs to be improved? How can we improve the process in the next presidential administration? What would you ask for? What do you think the needs are as a functional unit of nurses working?
So the nurses also are impacted by not having auxiliary staff that we need to. So if we don't have health techs, that's another task the nurses have to take on. And as Carolina stated, we have had four nurses with a caseload of 24 patients. Our mental health units need more support, more nurses, and that also causes an endangerment to the staff and to the nurses if we don't have enough. I think this new administration should look closely at the budget and understand that our patients are coming in with more comorbidity, and that will take more time for us, just like the patient you just spoke of. That's unconscionable that they would think that and didn't have the right amount of education. Carolina's really involved in extending education to our patients and having the timeliness to be able to do it to where they understand. I also offer that education in mental health. And mental health, if our patients are not taking their medication appropriately, then we have recidivism and they're back in the hospital. Many of them quite frequently back and needing mental health care. So we need funding. We need appropriate funding. Right now, the VA is under budget, and some of that could be related to the needs of supply demands and from COVID, and having to increase staffing during that period. But many of our nurses is projected that in 2025, 2026, about 70% of them may be leaving. And we have to be able to recruit and to retain. But Carolina can, expand on that.
Well, yes, definitely speaking to nurse retention, we have to focus on the things that, again, the nurses need to feel supported in our abilities to care for the veterans. With our ancillary staff, they function alongside us. They're the ones who assist with the vitals that may be needed in, extreme situations or just on a daily basis. And for this administration, we really do hope that they have the chance to look into, again, the nurse patient ratios, because while we are in a freeze right now where we're not really able to bring in more help, or we're pulling from other areas to support, but then taking away from other departments, we really need to be able to look at, again, is this a safe condition for the nurse to be able to safely administer care? So I agree with the need for ancillary staff, and just in general, we have to focus on ways to retain our nurses. We have looked into things such as alternate work schedules, which have seemed to be a benefit in helping the nurses' overall well-being, reduce burnout and fatigue, but we can't just stop there. We have to continue to appreciate the nurses and the staff overall who are taking the time, to be able to really dig into our veterans and ensuring that they're receiving proper care, and not just, as I like to call it, drive-by care, where you get the medicine and you just go. Like, we don't want that type of treatment.
Yeah, because that was one of the things, I was mentioning in an earlier show. For example, the public health workforce decreased by 50% during COVID, 50%. So there's a dire need for people in the public health arena, and that includes public health nurses and that kind of thing on the, in the external world. But there is also, projections that you're going to have 20 to 30% of physicians in the next 3 to 4 years retiring. You have about 40% of nurses in the next 3 to 5 years who are going to leave the workforce. And that's going to put a great strain on, the needs that are in the workforce. You also have something that I was going to sort of bring your attention to and ask you about this, is that, when we have wars, almost every 10 years about in a cycle in throughout the history of our country. And you have a younger population out there, OEF, OIF, and then you have an older population, World War II, veterans, and then Vietnam. And as the patients are getting older, it seems like you would have to have more coverage, because you have people who are losing their hearing, their vision, maybe have more cardiac involvement, those kinds of things, where you have to have more of an acute care attention paid to them. So have you seen that, like, over time, as the population is getting older, that it's putting even more strain on the nurses who are taking care of them?
Yes, that's one of our concerns, and we're expressing that they take more care, they take more time. And at this time, with the way the budget is, they don't even want to approve overtime. I've been in the hospital in private sector, and at 4 o'clock, those nurses are gone. Our nurses will still stay, even though we have to tell them they're supposed to get paid. But that's the dedication that we have to our veterans, that we will stay and we will care for them until somebody can come and relieve us. But the burden of caring for our veterans becomes greater, because many times they don't even come in until they're very, very sick. And then once they are admitted, with all the comorbidities and many problems, high blood pressure, stroke symptoms, diabetes, all that takes time to work with the patient. We can't just rush through and hang an IV. And right now there's a shortage on IV fluid. So the nurses have to mix those meds. They're not having pharmacy do it. The antibiotics are mixed now by the nurses, because many medications are administered through IV fluids. And because of that shortage, we have to find a way to cut back on the usage.
Wow, that's amazing. And so it's more than just an issue also of having enough staffing, but it's I think Carolina was really pointing it out. Having extra duties thrown on you as well, on top of the responsibilities you have as your part of your core mission, as a nurse. And so, what are the things, we were talking about staffing, but it sounds like you also needed the equipment, those things that you need to do your job. And that seems like that's a need as well. Do you see there's a shortage in having the things you need to actually perform?
I think the VA, this VA, Jesse Brown, has been very proactive in
Mm-hmm.
providing equipment and wheelchairs. But
Mm-hmm.
along with that, there are some patients have to be escorted to X-ray, MIRs, and that might take 2 nurses because that patient may be at risk of coding. So that's 2 nurses gone from the unit. And sometimes we don't have enough transporters. So to get the patient down timely, the nurses have to take them down because we don't have the health techs either, nor the transporters. So there's a bigger picture to healthcare than patients just coming into the hospital, recovering and go home. There's a lot that goes into achieving that recovery and being able to send that patient home. And like Carolina said, after their discharge planning, that takes a lot. Who's going to care for them in their environment that they're going to? Does the family need education on that? Who's going to set up the physical therapy and respiratory therapy, whatever they need? I mean, we need more nurses to decide that plan of care. And that's what Carolina and them are tasked with.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was thinking also that, I know a lot of jobs that if you don't have enough people, and part of your staff, then you have to start making, and you were mentioning it in part about, the overtime and that kind of thing, and people are staying. But, also for your own downtime, for your own mental health, because you're a caregiver. We always talk about caregivers at home, but you are a caregiver. So you're caring for multiple people. So how does that play into things about taking your vacation time, making sure you get your breaks, and just a little bit of downtime, because it can be very, very stressful in those situations.
Well, our nursing staff has scheduled breaks, and oftentimes they can't take it. So far, I'm not aware of any interruption in them taking their vacation time, but
Okay.
it's hard for them to take vacation time that is unplanned. So they may plan to go somewhere trying to capture or reduce costs for their flights and hotels, and then they're waiting to get that approved, and it may or may not be approved.
Mhm.
So those are other things that causes nursing dissatisfaction. They want to spend time with their families and stuff too, but we're always putting our veterans above anything that we're doing or planning. We're, like you say, we think about them all the time. You can't even drive home without thinking, I hope
Yeah.
Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so is okay. I hope they got this on time, things like that. And working at a VA and working with our veterans take a special kind of person to work here, because we're not here for the financial aspect. We're here for our veterans.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just really admirable. I mean, and people have to realize that, but as veterans, as people who are receiving these services, and I've always had a incredible relationship with my nurses when I go to the VA. They always sit me down and say, you need to get your vaccination. Shut up and sit down. So I comply. I just put my hands up. So, what do you think veterans can do on this side, because we're, the ones receiving care, and in part, the veterans can suffer from the lack of care, right?
Right.
If people are so tied up they can't, be taken care of. What do veterans need to be saying or doing? Is there anything we can do?
They need to hold their legislators accountable for the promises that they made to them during election seasons.
Hmm.
So it doesn't have to be a national election; it could be local elections. But they need to hold them accountable. Call your legislators. Ask them questions. Ask them why is the VA that you've chosen to go to don't have the adequate staff to provide the care that was promised to them. So the employees of the VA can't be the only one that is having a voice about what's going on. We need our veterans to participate in their care and demand the care that was promised to them when they went off to serve to protect our country and to protect us.
Mm-hmm. And Carolina, do you have any thoughts on that too?
And yes, and I think, again, working in the community care aspect of it and knowing that we do have more elderly veterans, as you mentioned, from different war settings that we're caring for now, once they get home, they have to be receptive to the support and the care that they're receiving from their families, as well as, some of the resources and the programs that the VA have. A lot of times when I'm speaking with my veterans who are planning for discharge home or have already been discharged, and we are talking about physical therapy or maybe home nurse visits, even for well-being checks, there is such a pride, of course, and an autonomy that veterans hold to themselves. And I just want to remind them that we're here to help. You have support, even family members that oftentimes want to help, and you don't, the veterans might not want to feel that they're putting that burden. Allow us to help you. Listen to the programs and the resources that we do have and how it can best benefit you, and utilize the resources because they are there, and it can help to take some of that strain off of especially the healthcare management at home, and to prevent them from, frequent hospitalizations or readmissions. Really listen to the support that's around you and be willing to kind of utilize the resources that are available, so that we can show them that the funds that are being put into this program, they are being used and they are necessary.
So how can people contact the program?
So they can always start by speaking with their primary care provider. The veteran does need to be assigned a primary care physician in a VA, but once they have established that, they can just speak to them about certain needs that they feel that they have. And a lot of time, the primary care physician will navigate them or direct them to the appropriate department, whether that's myself in community care or one of my colleagues, or whether that is, I know we spoke, you all had one of our colleagues in community care, Janika, Walker, in today with Caregiver Support Program.
Yes.
So we communicate. We are an interdisciplinary team. So start by talking to your primary care physician, or even if you just call in, and I'm sure even the operator can help direct you to the right department. But just speak your needs, your concerns. But I believe the primary care physician would be a good point of contact.
Well, I know two nurses that are going to be having a special place in heaven, Adelina Marshall and Carolina Stewart. Both of you are, remarkable. I just, feel like this is the kind of human being we need to have in the profession. So both of you are dedicated professionals, and we need to recognize that more. And I'm really imploring veterans who are listening to take your lead and make sure they get in contact with their legislators and help support this initiative. But we're moving on to another segment. But again, we're going to have you back. You know that. So looking forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Hello. We're here at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. Today is Wednesday, November 6, 2024. November is Military Family Appreciation, National Caregiver, Prostate Cancer Awareness, and Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. It's important to pay attention to all of these. And also, it's November 11th, this Veterans Day. We have been helping veterans like my next guest, Glenda Smith. And make sure you reach out to the veterans and your family and your friends and your coworkers and just say thank you. I am your host, U.S. Army Flight Surgeon and Iraq Combat Veteran Medic, retired Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. And we have a special guest on. It's our executive producer, AHG. She's been with the show, one of the founders of the show, and has been doing a wonderful job bringing this forward. And with the grace of God, she has been giving us guidance and help in making sure that this is a success. Today's discussion is going to be related to the U.S. 47th President-elect Donald J. Trump and the election analysis regarding his now coming into office, first as President 45 and now President 47. So welcome, Glenda. How are you doing?
I am fantastic, Dr. Arnold, and let me congratulate you on being host extraordinary today. You have had 5 wonderful, successful, substantive, great shows, and magnificent. Bravo, bravo, bravo to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome. So on behalf of America's Heroes Group, we extend our congratulations to the 47th President-elect, Donald J. Trump. So we want to just acknowledge his election and just make sure that people understand that we are one country, one nation, and when the voters have spoken, we must then come together collectively and say, move forward. So this is where we are. Congratulations, 47 Donald J. Trump. We congratulate you.
Yeah.
So, and future Commander-in-Chief starting as of 2025.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have a nation that must survive this experiment in democracy and all of that, and how we formulated our nation has to survive. That's what the military is here for. We make sure that people are safe, they go to bed and have sleep and that kind of thing. And as we're going through different administrations, we have to make sure we support each and every one of them in the best way
Absolutely.
we possibly do it.
Absolutely.
Sure. Because we have too many. We have veterans overseas that are in harm's way right as we speak.
Mhm.
People who are being trained in the nation right now on military bases. So that includes the Army, the Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Force, right? And the Coast Guard. So we have branches of service where we have dedicated members who are following their career track with the passion and the objective of making sure we protect our nation. So we have to
Yeah.
be really thankful for all of them. And as we're coming up to Veterans, Day,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah, it's apropos that we talk about them and say thank you, thank you, thank you, and
Yeah.
to let them realize how important they are to our nation.
Well, Dr. Arnold, I've shared with you and the panelists, Rochelle and Ernesto and Cliff and Sean over the years, my passion, my true passion for why I really do what I do, how I really enjoy doing what I do, because years ago I shared that at one time during my undergrad, and I was married, that I didn't want to incur student loans. And so I spoke to my then husband, let me join the armed services and get enlisted and then send for you, because then I can finish school without having student loan debts and all this and all that. And so he agreed. And so I chose the Marines, Dr. Arnold. It's the uniform. It's the uniform. So I had done everything. I had even started to recruit a little bit, and I was coming in with whatever you guys call it, a strike or whatever it was, because I had earned it in terms of what had been written in the contract, based on the fact that I had 2 people to join under me while I was waiting to get started, and I had done everything but sworn in, which means I had not raised that hand yet and swore to the nation. So during that time, Operation Desert became Desert Storm. I remember distinctly the night that war started. My heart was beating so fast. I woke up the next day, Dr. Arnold, and it's like I blacked out. I drove so quickly, or you want to say fast, to the recruiter's office. And I came in tears, and they knew it. They knew it, because I was having so much fun with them. I was just hanging out and I just saw myself being a Marine. And when I walked in crying, they knew. So I apologized to all of them. I hugged them, and I got all of my paperwork back, and I walked out, because I realized the fear that I had, I couldn't go in with that. So I take it personally. What I do, what I say, the research, because it's my way of truly saying to every man, for every man and woman who has had the courage. See, that's the word that's not really properly being understood. You can say you want to do something until it's time to have the courage to do it. I totally lost my courage. So I say to the men and women, past and present, who has had the nerve, the audacity, and the courage to put those boots on and go serve. Then you have to take a step back and say, as your husband, your wives, your mother, your fathers, your sisters, your brothers, significant others, you're leaving family members behind. So that's a second service, because why? That's a sacrifice. Because it ain't no guarantee that the family members are going to come back home. So when one serve, all serve. So it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure being the executive producer, and I understand the call that God has given me, and I praise God for giving it to me, for giving me the heart to want to serve, to say thank you, and to just give it my all, even on days when I don't feel like it, when it's hardships, because we don't have sponsors. People don't really financially donate like they could to keep us balanced and keep and sustain us. So God has made it possible for 8 years for us to still be here. Because why? The platform does what it's supposed to do. It is about the veterans, advocating on behalf of veterans. It's about veterans pointing to the veterans of their battle buddies. It's about making sure that the resources and information is getting to where it needs, just in case you didn't know. You're informed through America's Heroes Group. You have information that then empowers you to say, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, I'm now empowered because I understand clearly what I need to do and what was missing. So, but from you to Cliff, who is the co-founder, you as Vietnam veteran, the man, the voice, the legend forever. He is America's Heroes Group because he took this organization upon his back with his name and integrity. And we started April 2016. And he didn't stop until he got sick. And we all know he almost died. Heart disease and other things from complications and all this. But he is forever America's Heroes Group. So between Cliff, you, Dr. Arnold, you came on, Sean came on next, you came next, Rochelle, Ernesto, Manny, it has been a chore, a labor of love, because every one of you have poured into this organization in ways that has made it phenomenal. And then other people came on later, Ivan Ortega. It's been a commitment, because why? It has been about the veterans, caring for people who have served while we slept, while we walked freely, while we're so jaded into not understanding the threats that we live upon. Because if our enemies, Dr. Arnold, could really get close to us, we'll be living just like those other countries, being bombed and threatened every day. But because the men and women, see, that's what people don't understand. The armed forces are the defenders of democracy, defenders of our constitutional right that allows us the freedom to live freely. And they sacrifice it all 24/7 by air, land, and sea. So it's seriously, it's a labor of love. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it immensely. So it's my pleasure to say November 11th, Happy Veterans Day. But I try to say it every day, not the words, because people can easily say that, Dr. Arnold. It doesn't mean a damn thing if your heart is not right. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have any actions behind it. So I try to live Happy Veterans Day for veterans and their family members every day, not to mention the armed forces. Yeah, so I enjoy it. I do.
Yeah, and it's really important to realize that, I give a talk and all that, and what I tell people is, what I ask them to do is to tap on the table 60 times in a minute. Then I tell them I want you to do it 100 times in a minute. And I say that your heart, from the moment that you're born, even before you're born, to the time you die, beats 60 to 100 times a minute as an average for normal. It never stops. That's like the military. It never stops. It's beating every second of every minute, of every day, of every hour, of every week, of every month, of every year.
Wow.
Of every decade, of every 100 years, of every century. It has been beating through time, and it has been beating to protect our nation.
Yeah.
And that is a heavy responsibility. And the training and the dedication of people who are there. Many of them, have given their lives, and many have been injured, with wounds of war. We talk about the VA, one of our partners, the Jesse VA. And that is, a level of, and we should never leave them alone. I mean, that's why, we set aside this day on November 11th to talk about a Veterans Day, to make sure that we never, ever forget.
Yes.
And and Memorial Day. We never ever forget their sacrifices, the ones who died in combat and war. So,
Yes.
I'm hoping that this tradition is fully respected, and we get the funding and the needs, and the needs are met of the modern day warriors who are out there, and their commanders and people who are in place to make sure that they stay as safe as possible as they're
Yeah.
fighting conflicts and wars and
Yeah.
defending the nation, and they're not forgotten.
Yeah. To President-elect Donald J. Trump, our next Commander-in-Chief, I wholeheartedly, if some type of way this telecommunication can find its way to someone in his circle or where it is, I will hopefully request that the next VA Secretary appointment would be Tanya Brashear. She's currently now the 10th Deputy Secretary of Veteran Affairs. I would hope that the 57% women that voted to elect President Donald J. Trump would have some type of portfolio that lets the world know that women can do it. Women are here. Women are eligible. And she is so qualified. She's second in line to the current VA secretary. She is ready to go day one. Not just that, but she has served and has earned the right. We've never had, Dr. Arnold, a woman VA secretary. And it's time. It's time for this country to understand that women can rightfully take that position as they are qualified to be that. And she is so ready. She's so ready. Her name is Tanya Brashear. And she's currently, right now, the 10th Deputy Secretary of Veteran Affairs. So I'm so hoping that he, his administration, and his cabinet appointments, someone would give her that look, that consideration, and say, let her become that first woman VA secretary, because it's needed. It's needed beyond that. And so in thinking about her and mentioning her, I've been reflective today of my grandmother. As a little girl in Mississippi, I remember walking in the back door with her because she was a maid. And that was during the 60s, Jim Crow. I thought of my aunts, my dad's sisters, who picked cotton. They were sharecroppers, doing the best they could to survive. I thought of all of the women, my mother, all the women who have come before me, who have made it possible for me to become and take my rightful place as I earn it, not given to me, as I earn it. So I'm so proud of Hillary. I'm so proud of Kamala. I'm so proud of the women who have come before me, because you have blazed a trail for every woman to keep marching forward, to become what you are qualified to be. And so we keep it moving forward. We keep it moving forward. But I'm just hopeful that President-elect Donald J. Trump and his new administration would give Deputy Secretary Tanya Brashear that opportunity that she's earned and she's qualified for. Not a DEI, but what she has earned and she's qualified for. She's already sitting at number 2 seat. She's ready to step in and be the VA secretary. So I'm just praying. I'm praying that she's given that title. So looking forward to 2025, Dr. Arnold. Just, the holidays are coming up, and we're going to just let the year roll out and get ready for the new year of 2025 as it approaches. And we're going to take it one step at a time.
Yep.
One step at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, my thoughts and prayers go out to all the family members and, and the veterans, throughout the nation for a very, very happy Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And,
yes.
The holidays that, our Jewish brothers and Middle Eastern brothers and China, all the different religions that they are, participating in, that they find some peace.
Yes.
In this world.
Yes. So needed.
Yes. And that God, just grants them, the serenity and the peace that they need to get through this time. I also want to reach out to all those first responders for Helena.
Yes.
And for, protecting our nation every day. We've had so many tornadoes and hurricanes and wildfires, and it's easy to watch it in a soundbite on the media and the news, but then to sit back and realize how long this is going on, it's still going on for them.
Yeah,
we have just been taken out of the cycle of the pain and suffering they're going through. Just praying for all of them to rebuild their homes, their lives, their families, their businesses. It is critical that that nation builds up. Those are veterans out there too, who have lost their business or jobs or homes, and we need to make sure that we help them. We just help them.
Yes, yes, and I'm so hopeful because the people have spoken that the new administration have a strong VA system in place, making sure that the benefits and other things that are in place move forward, ensuring that our veterans can still live a productive and decent life, making sure that health care coverages are there, just making sure we're doing right by those who have served this country. Not asking much, but just making sure the veterans, the family members, the benefits and all things that's needed will be in place, intact, so that they know that their service wasn't in vain, that their lives means something in honor and respect from us, the taxpayers who care, who cares. So,
and when you get into a leadership position, you have a very great responsibility to the people, but you also have an opportunity to lead your administration with compassion.
Yes.
And that's probably the highest quality you can achieve in life. That's my own personal experience has been, through practicing medicine and, going even to war zones. It's that level of compassion for people and really holding on to your principles of, as a person of belief in a higher power, that compassion is more powerful than anything else you can ever amass on earth. I pray that they, have interwoven into their administration a high level of compassion for the American people.
I do. I feel hopeful. I feel hopeful that it's a new beginning forward, and that this country can now start to some type of way heal from all of the negativity, from all of the past differences, that we could just move forward as one under the new leadership, being respectful, embracing the voters' choice voice as one, and productively live in being good neighbors good neighbors, respectful neighbors of indifferences or whatever. Just understanding that each person has the right and they are entitled to live their life.
That's right.
Live their life. Yeah. So I'm hopeful that I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. Just a new start.
Yeah.
A new start. Yeah.
And then we had some great times with a couple of generals over the last couple of days or weeks.
Oh yeah, we have. Yeah, we have. That was a great event in Chicago State. OMG. The young people are alive and vibrant and ready. The ROTC, U.S. Army ROTC in Chicago State, they're ready. They are ready. And that's a good thing to see when you want to serve. Not that you have to, you want to. It's a difference between wanting to do something and feeling like you have to do it.
You're being compelled to do it.
There you go. Because that means it's coming from your heart, which is your character. See, a person's action is their character. You can say, but your character comes from your heart through your actions.
Right.
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
And so, we're really encouraging you to go on to our website and look at those podcasts, because there's some really powerful information in there. And the generals we had speaking, they actually gave this information that would change your life. And it really had a deep impact on the kids who were there. I say kids, college. I'm getting too old, I guess, Glenda. But
they're kids compared to us.
But they, college students, and they were ROTC bound, and I looked at them and they were like squared away. They would, when I spoke to them, they were all respectful, very focused, and this is what I'm going to do. Stood up strong and tall, and you could tell their character was becoming enriched by their experience and what they were doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Arnold, you had a wonderful hosting day, extraordinary. Yeah, it was seriously speaking, each show brought the substance and the content that America's Heroes Group has become known by, excellence and integrity in terms of the platform of resources and information, helping to empower, helping to inform, helping to connect so that you can make great decisions. So to you and all the other, sir?
And we're looking forward to having some great national leaders. We have people who are going to be coming on the show that we make sure that you show up for, because they are spectacular. We have a whole list of people. We actually may be running out of a programming year by the time we finish putting everyone in the slots. But
oh my goodness.
We have some incredible people that we have been blessed with being able to talk to them and get into their presence, and they are interested in talking to you. So that's something that we are looking forward to every week, 5 to 8 p.m.
Yes,
you
that's right.
Great amount.
That's true. So everyone have a blessed week, and to all our veterans, past and present, blessings for your unwavering excellence in service, dedication, sacrifices to the United States of America. Happy Veterans Day.
And thank you, Glenda. And is that you're in your mom's house?
Yeah.
Apple pie on the table or something.
Okay.
AHG Connects, where voices,
have a good one.
Information
Love
and resources are empowered intentionally.
Okay.